Right, welcome along to the RT Soccer World Cup podcast. Raf Diallo here, and tonight I'm joined by Ed Leahy of RT Sport Online and former Ireland international Keith Treacy. At the moment, as you've probably noticed, the template of these podcasts, we tend to record during the second half of the late game, and at the moment, about an hour in, England leading Senegal 3-0, and obviously earlier France beat Poland 3-1, and the last 16s continue on Monday and Tuesday. But Ed, I was a little bit worried during the first half in terms of what time to start recording this, because obviously we have to factor in extra time. And it wasn't looking good for either side at the one point.
It wasn't, was it? A very slow, scrappy start to this game. I don't think we're going to be looking at extra time now, as England are very comfortably through, more or less, now to the quarterfinals. They were really disorganised looking outfit, with no one really pulling the team together in the first 35 minutes. Two goals then just before half time really sort of settled the nerves, and they come out in the second half and they look a different team. Yeah, and it's all really down to one man, Jude Bellingham. He seems to be the one player who has the confidence to take the ball on, take on players, and make those decisive passes.
Yeah, so the goals have come from Jordan Henderson, then Harry Kane, and then finally Bukayo Saka, with Bellingham very much centrally involved in the first two. Keith, that means obviously your prediction that England could potentially go all the way is very much safe.
It's safe for the time being, Raf, but you know, if we are saying that England are through, and it really does look that way, bar maybe a Senegalese miracle, but yeah, the French in the next round, which, listen, if they can beat the French, I'd be all in that they could potentially go and win it, because for me, it's wide open, because even, you know, we'll probably touch on the French and the Polish game later, but for me, the French look beatable, the English are beatable, Brazil are beatable, all of the big nations are beatable, so it's just who defends the best, you know, and for me, yeah, like I say, I'm seeing weaknesses in everybody, which is it's wide open for the neutral, which is great. But yeah, look, England are through to the next round, so I get to where I was like you, Raf. I wasn't sure whether I was coming on here to defend myself or, you know, just get my head down and get through to the next round. But we'll see how we go against France on the weekend.
Yeah, as Ed said there, the first half was particularly scrappy up until about 15 minutes in, and then Senegal took over, and it seemed to be England couldn't get out from, you know, their passing lanes from the back four into the midfield seemed to be non-existent until they scored that opening goal through Henderson on 37 minutes. What was Senegal doing right, Keith, to be able to block their progression through the middle third?
Well, they were just congested in the middle of the pitch. It was just so many bodies in there, and the one thing that was, I wouldn't say worrying about the English, it was John Stones and Maguire. They kept trying to force it through the middle. And if Senegal are going to get really, really narrow and congested the middle of the pitch, give the ball out to Saka, give it out to Foden, and just keep walking it from side to side, tire out the Senegalese legs, and then eventually a 2v1 will appear in the wide areas, and then you can go and hit them from there, put real quality into the box. They didn't do that. They kept forcing it. Senegal were growing in the game because they won the ball high up in the English half once or twice. Pickford made an outstanding save. Otherwise, the English would have been behind. So, again, although I've obviously backed England, but it's so interesting because, again, every team is beatable. Just, you know, even the French, Brazil and England, again, although they're winning 3-0 here and it looks quite comfortable on paper, you know, there was 35 minutes where, you know, it was really, really in the balance.
Yeah, and then obviously Jude Bellingham has been the key to unlocking Senegal. So he had already made a couple of runs before Senegal took over the game on 15 minutes. He'd been involved in the first crossover to Bukayo Saka. Also, Harry Kane put one in towards the far post, which maybe Saka was a little bit slow to respond to. But in regards to Bellingham and how he took control of the game, obviously he has Henderson and Rice beside him in the centre of midfield. He's kind of playing slightly further forward. Like, just how impressed have you been with the runs he has made in this game?
I'm really impressed, Raf, for a 19-year-old to realise that, you know, I'm saying that John Stones and Harry Maguire weren't realising that the middle of the pitch for England was so congested, they kept trying to force it. he, after about half an hour, started to realise this is too tight in here. I'm going to start running beyond the defence of Senegal. And once or twice, he didn't get the ball, but he was starting to stretch people. Then you see him the third time when Foden flicks around the corner, Kane gets it. All of a sudden, Jude Bellingham's gone. The Senegal midfielder doesn't fancy the run with him, and they're in. And he keeps his head, finds Henderson. It's brilliant. But the willingness to run without the ball, it's such a simplistic thing to say, but so many footballers don't want to run without the ball. And Jude Bellingham, to be 19, to realise that to solve problems on the pitch is such a big, big thing to be able to do. And for somebody of 19 years of age, to realise that when you're in amongst the heat of it, it really is outstanding. And he's so close to be into that world-class bracket already at 19. The sky's the limit for this guy. It really is.
Yeah, and I suppose another thing as well, so Henderson's goal came on 38 minutes, and then Kane from Foden's assist for the 45th minute. Their earliest goal in the tournament so far came in the opening game against Iran on 35. Do you read much into those kind of stats in terms of how long it takes them really to break down teams? Given at the Euros, they actually seem to start quite quickly.
They did, didn't they? That's a good question, Ralph, because I've been watching the second half here, and especially even since the third goal's gone in, and they're suddenly playing like a team with confidence and composure, and the quality of the players like Foden is really starting to show, because they're playing without any sort of fear here, and knowing that they're through to the next round. And I think it is down to that pressure that's on the team, that they're just not performing to their capabilities, because you can see what they're capable of here at 3-0 up to just totally dominate a team and not even allow Senegal to get back in possession. So it's obviously a big pressure on the team, and there's also stuff going on within the camp. A couple of players have personal issues, so we don't know the seriousness of those. That may also be affecting the squad. If their teammates are having serious personal issues, So I just think overall it's the World Cup, and they're not playing to their potential. We've seen that now in 2 of the 4 games, and even you'd argue even the Wales game they weren't even great. So they need to believe in themselves and sort of channel what they were doing in Euros last year to maybe go and take that into the France game, because otherwise France will have to beat before they get going.
Yeah, and of course, another pattern from the Euros as well. So Harry Kane did not score in the group stages of either competition, this World Cup or the last Euros. But then he has scored now, and he went on a run in the knockout stages of the European Championships last year. What have you made of his performance today, Keith? I mean, he was having a running battle with Abdou Diallo, in brackets, no relation here, during the first half, but. He did seem to be quite dangerous as well in terms of dropping into space and trying to play passes in behind.
Yeah, he is. And, sometimes you want them to stay away. You want them to go and occupy the 2 centre-halves. But, the reason Harry Kane is in the English team is because of what he does for Spurs. And what he does for Spurs is he gets the ball deep, he will turn, he'll get runners with Kulusevski and so on, and he'll bring them into play with his passing range. And we've seen a little glimpse of that with the English force goal when Foden flicks around the corner and Kane gets it and plays Bellingham through. So, look, he's obviously not at his prolific best in front of goal, but I think it's 3 assists, and this is obviously a goal now. So, after 4 games, 3 goals and an assist is not a bad return. I'd like to see him hit the net a little bit more. And look, I think the English, to pick up on what Ed is saying, I think sometimes we can be a little bit too harsh on the English. The English media are obviously very, very harsh, some of the pressure that comes on them, but nobody qualified as well as the English with the 7+ goal difference and the 7 points. They were the strongest qualifiers out of everybody. And I would go back to the Iran game when they scored 6. I think Iran proved themselves that they were better than that. So I would give England huge credit for that. And to beat a Senegal team when, we're all saying that they haven't been great, England, by any stretch of the imagination, but they're winning the game 3-0 pretty comfortably. So that for me would be a big positive. But I take Ed's point, against the likes of France, if they start slowly, the game could be outreached before they even get going. So there will be another step up in class on the weekend. But for now, yeah, all boxes ticked and happy enough with it.
Yeah, so 69 minutes just on the screen I have here. Still England 3, Senegal 0. Let's talk about France. 3-1 winners over Poland. Olivier Giroud breaking the French national record that Thierry Henry had held for a number of years, and also then Kylian Mbappe then taking over the couple goals towards the end. What did you make of France's overall performance? Because there is a kind of view that it wasn't a complete performance by any means.
Yeah, it would be fairly similar to what I think of England now. You know, they're getting the game won. They look fairly comfortable in large patches, but there is times when you thought, oh, God, that was a bit nervous. And, you know, Varane doesn't look fully fit to me. I know he had a hamstring injury coming up to the World Cup. For me, he's a little bit off it. And look, I've seen an awful lot of the French in the Nations League, and that's why I find it so hard to get behind them. Griezmann, for me, looks a shadow of himself. People still seem to have him in and around the world-class bracket. Not for me. I think he's way, way off that now. And I know Giroud, for some reason, doesn't get the plaudits he deserves. He's an absolute goal machine for the French. When you have a player like Mbappe with all the pace in the world, you still need a threat to keep the defenders away from him. And he does that so well. But for me, if you keep Kylian Mbappe quiet, which is a lot easier said than done, but if you can somehow get Mbappe out of the game, get him disinterested, I think France fall away by the wayside. But having said that, Raf, you could say the same about Neymar with Brazil. You could say the same about Argentina with Messi. So there's big players for every country, and if you keep them quiet, I think you go to 90% of dealing with France's danger.
Yeah, and Ed, as we know, France probably have the best depth of any country at the World Cup. Obviously, they're missing the likes of Pogba, Kante, who were central to winning the World Cup the last time. But actually, when you look at their back four and also the heart of their central midfield, it's when you compare it to their most recent tournaments, it's been all a change.
It has, hasn't it? You talk about the strength of the team. Individually, I think that's true. You look at all the players. Look at the back four. You pick a player from Barcelona, Madrid, Bayern Munich. Top players from the top clubs around Europe, but they're not necessarily coming together as a unit just yet. I don't think. I think Griezmann has shown glimpses of what he can do, and I think he's key for France being successful in this World Cup. And like Keith said, the Mbappe factor is huge, and you see the sort of contrast with the similarities, but also the contrast of the two wide men up front. How they're both electrically fast take-on players, cause awful problems, but Mbappe is the one who's delivering the goods, really. And likewise, I'm a huge fan of Giroud. But then you've got players like Kingsley Coman is sort of one of the first subs to come on. I don't think the strength and depth is there to come on and make the team necessarily stronger off the bench. It's coming on to fill gaps and plug gaps, but I don't think they're as strong a squad as they look on paper. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. What I do like about them is that they're so reliant on the front unit that the defence and holding midfielders aren't necessarily having to commit too far forward, which will make them a tough team to play against. If you look at the counter, like the way England looked good on the counter attack tonight, I don't think they'll get the same sort of space running forward as the French team.
Yeah, because during the match, Jamie Carragher tweeted that the scary thing is Matty Cash has actually done okay against hashtag Mbappe, and then screaming face emoji. In that first half, actually, Cash and also Kamil Glik, I think there had been a concern about Glik obviously being sort of an aging centre-back and not the most mobile either. The Polish, how impressed were you with how they set up in that first half? Because France didn't exactly cut through them all that much. Sometimes Mbappe did get a bit of space to run into, but they weren't able to tie everything together.
Yeah, I thought Poland actually handled Mbappe quite well, which is, sounds like a ridiculous thing to say when he's coming off the pitch after scoring 2 goals. But if you sit down and watch the 90 minutes of football, he had a couple of runs at Matty Cash. Matty Cash actually took the ball off him once or twice, done quite well. And Yeah, the Asian centre half Glick didn't help him out too much. There was once or twice when he was 1v1, and you could see Matty Cash trying to tell him, "Come over and help me. I need you to help me." And you know, I'm 34, and I wouldn't be going over there to expose myself either. So I thought Matty Cash did do quite well. Poland as a team defended quite well, really deep. And the good thing was when they won it, they sprung out really, really quickly. And Matty Cash, we've seen him do it for Villa so many times. He's really, really good at that. And yeah, again, I put the French in a similar vein to the English. That look, they're getting through. They seem comfortable in qualifying, but there's still an avenue to beat them. They're not unbeatable. You're not going into this thinking, God, we're going to have to shut up shop here. And England's best attributes is going forward. France's best attributes are going forward. They both have weaknesses at the back. Harry Maguire, I thought, was very good against the USA. I think he's coming down a level again against the Senegal now. So he might have to be looked at. I know he hasn't played a lot of time for Manchester United. So for me, the English and the French, I think it's going to be a great game, an attacking game. And I think we'll get goals. It's just whoever's attackers are on form on the night will win the game for them.
Yeah, and certainly Mbappe has 5 goals, which puts him clear at the moment in the Golden Boot race. And Giroud not too far behind as well, 3 goals. And obviously there was much made in the last World Cup about the fact he didn't find the net, but obviously like he ended up with a World Cup winners medal. I think he was being compared to Stefan Givash, who people might remember from the 1998 World Cup team, who filled space up front while the rest of the team kind of coalesced behind him. But obviously you've mentioned before, Keith, that you're an Arsenal fan. Giroud is a very underappreciated figure, but then you look at he's a late bloomer, and the fact he's broken a record set by Thierry Henry, who had a really, really long career with France. He's been outstanding for them.
Yeah, it's a really weird one. Olivier Giroud, I think of him at Arsenal. I always loved him playing because obviously me being a winger when I played, I can see the value in having somebody like that up there. And to be a striker and a French striker, and we spoke about in the same vein in terms of records as Thierry Henry, he must be up there. And look, I think he's outstanding. I really do. And his time at Arsenal, the way he just occupies centre halves, he's not the quickest in the world, but he'll occupy centre halves. He'll work hard for the team. He's a great aerial threat. And he seems to be really good in and around the teams. He seems to be a good bloke. All the things I heard back at his time at Arsenal was that his teammates love him. And he's one of a very, very few centre forwards that can actually have a good game and not score a goal. He doesn't have to score to have a good game. The likes of Harry Kane sometimes will be spoke about if he doesn't score a goal because he needs to have an assist or score a goal to play well. Giroud doesn't. Giroud can affect the game, just by standing on 2 centre halves and leaving Mbappe 1v1. He can affect games without getting on the score sheet. And that, for me, he is in the world class bracket. You really have to say he is. On the eye, you probably wouldn't think it, but when you start scratching the surface and having a look at his stats, he really does fall into the world class bracket and still doing it year after year after year. And when he left Arsenal and went to Chelsea, people were thinking he wasn't good enough for Arsenal. He couldn't hold down a place. And just a word on the man's mentality to just keep going and going and going. Because even at Chelsea, he didn't get in. Now he's over in Italy, still scoring goals for the French team now as well. And a lot of people would say he wouldn't even be in the squad if Benzema was fit. So more power to him. I think he's an excellent player and a great pro.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the runs he makes as well, because it's interesting. Usually a target man will try and, because of the lack of pace, will go towards the far post. But it's time and time again you watch him, even sort of today. I know it wasn't a ball that came from out wide, but he has this habit of going to the near post and often kind of flicking it in. It's just it's an interesting skill he has that maybe other players of that profile don't do.
Yeah, but that's the first thing. I think that's probably why I have that little bit more appreciation than maybe your average person is, because when you're a winger, you're always told when I put my head down to go and cross the ball, there has to be a striker going across the front post. You very, very rarely will score a headed goal from outside the width of the post. You have to be inside them. So if you can dart in front of the centre half at the last second, you're unsighting the centre half as well. It could come off his shoulder, go into the back of the net. And if you make that run, you're dragging the centre half with you as well, and you're making room for your teammates at the back post. So he knows where the goal scoring areas are, and he knows where to be. He gets a good relationship with all these wingers as well. They know when to cross the ball. And when I think of Olivier Giroud, I think of that scorpion kick he scored for Arsenal. He makes that run across the front post, as you're saying, Raf, but the ball is behind him, and somehow it ends up in the back of the net. He throws a heel at it, and he scores spectacular goals. He scores tap-ins. He scores scruffy goals, and he can rough up defenders as well. He can do a couple of different options. So, yeah, look, he's absolutely excellent. I think he's a great player, and again, it just his mentality as well just astounds me how he keeps going.
Yeah, and Ed, just after the game, Kenny Cunningham and Stephen Kelly were debating the issue of Dembele and whether, obviously at the moment France have gone with Griezmann sort of playing that number 10, but he can drift around the pitch, and then you have Mbappe coming in off the left, Dembele using his pace on the other side. Kenny thinks the optimal move for France would be to have a third midfielder and drop Dembele. Does that look likely to happen, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think Deschamps put out his set out stall now, and he's sticking to it. I think he's happy enough with the way they're going. They look, like Keith said, they're not firing on all cylinders, and they look like they have weaknesses in in defence and stuff. But no, I think Dembele's pace, it sort of makes other teams think, doesn't it? It's like Mbappe, you really have to set your team out to handle that pace. So I think Deschamps is quite happy, and I think to throw another midfielder into the mix there would have to be somebody with a real bit of creativity. But I just think the way Griezmann moves about, and he has such a free role that another midfielder might just get in his way.
Yeah, and from the English point of view, then, if France stick with this 4-2-3-1, Keith, how do you expect England to set up? Will it be going straight to the back five? Obviously, Mbappe plays the opposite side of where Harry Maguire tends to be, but I would imagine again Kyle Walker's going to be key and probably going to be moving inside.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm looking at it now, and I think Gareth Southgate will go to a back five. I think he might play Trippier as the right wing back and have Kyle Walker as the right side of centre half. And he would be told every time that Kylian Mbappe gets the ball, I would get Trippier to go and engage with him, but have Kyle 10 yards behind him and let him know that, try and take the space away from him effectively. But I would also drop a little bit deeper than they would be used to. I would really just try and negate that pace of Mbappe and try and nullify it as much as possible. But I understand that the more that England drop, the more you're going to invite balls into the box, and Giroud is going to be there. Griezmann will be sniffing about. So there's dangers in everything that England do. So I do think you'll go with a five at the back, maybe try and double up on Mbappe, maybe take turns kicking him. Maybe that could be something that they could try and do, because it seems so hard to stop him. He's giving people 10 yards and knocking the ball past him and still, putting the afterburners on. So it'll be a team effort to try and stop him. And look, what Ed is saying about France in the middle, Tchouaméni and Rabiot, I think they can be dominated in there. Bellingham, Foden, Kane dropping in there, Henderson, they'll all be thinking, yeah, we can dominate that French midfield. So maybe there could be an extra French midfielder thrown in there just to try and... But again, that congests the game, and that will force the game out to the wings, which is where Mbappe is. So whether the English will want that or not, I'm not too sure. Maybe they'll try and, block up the channels and force it through the middle. So there's pros and cons, and I wouldn't want to be Gareth Southgate this weekend anyway, I'll tell you that, because whatever he does is going to be wrong.
Yeah, certainly.
Just can I ask Keith there, just on that sort of scenario. Let's say England do go back to a back five almost, just to sort of factor the Mbappe put the Mbappe factor there. Who did they lose from midfield? Is which way do you see them? What do you see happening there? Will Henderson and Rice both still be able to play in that team?
Yeah, I would play the five. Obviously, Shaw, Stones, Maguire, Walker, Trippier, and I'd have Rice and Henderson in front, and I would tell them not to move, and obviously always be thinking about Mbappe. When we lose the ball, where's Mbappe? Get really, really heavy on that side. I tell Shaw, you're going to have to do well on Dembele. The lesser of two evils is Dembele. Try and do 1v1 on him, double up on Mbappe, congest the middle of the pitch. Don't Henderson and Rice, don't let the ball come into Giroud's feet. Nullify him. And Bellingham, every time we get it, I want you to be the ball carrier. You go and get the ball up to Kane, up to Foden, up to Grealish, up to whoever it is up there. You be the ball carrier and be the link from the back to the front. And look, they might soak up pressure. They might go toe to toe with the French. I'm not too sure, but whatever they do, it's going to be really, really interesting, because I haven't seen a team or a defensive display yet where I went, that worked brilliant on Mbappe, let's do that. Pace is the one thing that you can't defend against. It's really, really difficult. And I think the English will need Mbappe to have a little bit of an off day, which is not beyond the realms of possibility. And if he does, I think France come down from a world-class team to a very, very good team, which is very, very beatable. So, like I say, I think it's an excellent game, and I can't call it. I'm hoping the English come out on the right side of it, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Obviously, they're into the quarterfinals and going to face each other. Obviously, Argentina too, and the Dutch playing each other in the next round. But tomorrow, the last 16 continues. So the 3:00 game on RT2 and the RT player is Japan against Croatia. It's been a good World Cup for the Asian teams, Keith. But compared between this one and the 7:00 kickoff between Brazil and South Korea, I would imagine probably Japan has a greater chance of pulling off an upset, and probably would be viewed as an upset if they beat Croatia than the 7:00 kickoff.
Yeah, look, Japan against Croatia, a bit Brazil against South Korea. You would think if there's going to be an upset there, it'll be the Japanese against the Croatians. Brazil, though, again, Raf, if I'd have told you at the start of the tournament the Saudi Arabians would beat Argentina, you'd have said not a chance. So it's that sort of World Cup that you can't take your eye off it, because you'll come back in the door and you'll hear that South Korea beat Brazil 2-1 and you'll have missed out. So it's really, really difficult. I've been really impressed with the Japanese, I have to say. There's some decent players in that team. The front line, Kubo on the right wing, he's a great ball carrier. The Japanese are probably, I would speak to the English about the French game and say, take the template from the Japanese, because they sit so deep, but when they get a chance to get up the pitch, they do it really, really quickly, and they're prepared to suffer out possession of the ball. They'll run all day. They super fit, and that's what you need to do. And I think we're seeing the value, especially in this World Cup, of a really strong team unit, teams that will they're prepared to suffer out possession. They'll do all the nasty stuff, put tackles in, and look, Japan, I wouldn't write them off. I really wouldn't, because, like I say, they just seem to be a great team unit. But Croatia have this knack of just winning games that, they're not setting the world on fire, but they're just going through. And that Modric is just evergreen. And I think it was really telling when you listen to what Kevin De Bruyne said about the Belgians maybe being over the hill. And Modric never speaks like that about any of his Croatian counterparts, even though it would be true. And him himself, age and legs, he never seems to worry with that. And it was just two different mentalities that I thought were quite interesting.
Yeah, and of course the Croatians were runners-up last time out in 2018. But there was a lot of focus, obviously, when they drew with Belgium, Ed, in regards to Lukaku and the number of missed chances. But what that also tells you is Croatia were sort of on the ropes as well. What have you made of them and their performance in this competition so far?
Croatia or Japan?
Oh, sorry, Croatia.
Croatia, I've seen glimpses of their former self. I don't think they're anywhere near as strong as they were 4 years ago. But Modric is just he's still so key to that team, and he is getting on a bit. And what they're talking about players like Lovro Maja coming in as being the next Modric, he's not ready to take over the mantle yet. And even the coach said so today. He said that we actually need Luka for the next few years. He's not going anywhere just yet, which sort of shows that the strength and depth isn't there, and the next generation isn't stepping up to the same levels as we've seen over the last 10 years. And on that note, I think that's why Japan have a really good chance. I think, as Keith alluded to there, Japan are the worst team in terms of keeping possession of all 16 teams who've qualified. So it's going to be a very interesting game. But Japan themselves think that they're the strongest Japanese team that they've had, and they're very, very confident in terms of progressing. And I'm actually leaning towards Japan to win that one.
Yeah, they're trying to get to the quarterfinals for the very first time in their history. They've been in the last 16 quite a lot. Now they would be trying to emulate what South Korea did at the in the 2002 World Cup, when South Korea got all the way to the semi-finals, albeit a couple of handy refereeing decisions in some of those games from memory. But this their match against Brazil, 7 o'clock, RT2 RT player, Keith, that appears to be a very tall order. I mean, they've done very well to get out of a group at the expense of Uruguay, but Brazil, obviously with Neymar back in the team, are going to be far too strong for them, one would imagine.
Yeah, you would think so, Raf, on paper, but there's so much pressure, heat on this Brazilian team, as there is with the Argentinians as well, and the same to be said about the English, to be fair. There's so much pressure that, it could tell at any time. It could just become too much. And, the longer that game stays 0-0 with the South Koreans, the more they'll grow into it. And they have that man, Son, who he seems to be a real talisman. But South Korea are a lot more than just a one-man team. They've got some real talent in there and a real good team unit that, like I say, they will suffer in possession. They won't mind Brazil having the ball. They'll be prepared to play with set pieces and get up the pitch that way. So, look, it would be one I'd be really, really interested to watch. I'd expect Brazil to win it, but I don't think it'll be easy. I really don't think there's any games left. And, even England are beating Senegal 3-0 now, but that wasn't an easy game for a long, long time. That was in the balance. I feel this game will be the same. And for as good as Brazil are, I've been impressed with Anthony playing for Brazil. Richarlison's obviously amazing when he plays for Brazil. But if Neymar's off it, which I've seen at PSG a few times, he can be off it. And if he's off it, I think Brazil come down a level. For as good as they are, with the amount of attacking players have, the amount of attacking talent they have, yeah, I think he's still such a big, big part of what the Brazilians do. And we seen the other day when they were beating the last group game that they weren't completely on it. So, yeah, the Brazilians are beatable, but there's so much firepower in there, it's hard to look past them.
Yeah, and up front, they have so many options to pick from. Obviously, they've lost Gabriel Jesus now to a knee injury, so he's not going to be involved. But if you were to look at the 3 or 4 up front in terms of whatever combination, usually Lucas Paquetá is going to be one of them, just as a more of a natural attacking midfielder. But would you be introducing Vinicius, or can he and Neymar and Richarlison and possibly whoever is going to be playing on the right wing, which isn't necessarily going to be Anthony, it'll probably be Rafinha. What's the most impressive you've seen in terms of the balance of players that they've chosen?
Well, like I said, I was really impressed with Anthony. Some of his skill in 1v1 situations have been really, really good. I think he switches off defensively an awful lot to try and trust him in these big games. So I'm not sure Anthony will get the nod. Richarlison, Neymar, I think we'd say that they're certs to go in. Me being an Arsenal fan, I'd love to see Martinelli. I think he warrants it on his season. I think he's playing excellent for Arsenal. So I'd love to see Martinelli get a shot on the left, Neymar on the right, and Richarlison through the middle. Paqueta probably just behind them. So, look, it's fairly similar to the English with the amount of attacking talent they have. That some of them are a toss of a coin. There's some of them that are nailed in. Richarlison's form for Brazil means he'll be in there. Neymar will be in there. The rest of them are really a toss of a coin, but it's more about the attitude of the team and rather than the individuals. And if they all turn up hungry with a desire to work hard and show how good they can be, Brazil will be very, very hard to stop. But if people start sulking and thinking, oh, he should be in, that should be in, it can get all a little bit sticky. So, yeah, look, amazing talent the Brazilians have. It really is. And like I said, there's so much talent up there. It's just a toss of a coin and who you play. For me, I'd love to see Martinelli get a couple of minutes and see how he fares. Obviously, being in the Premier League, I've seen an awful lot of him. So I'd like to see him come into the World Cup and start the game for Brazil.
Yeah, and Ed, like we've mentioned, the veteran in regards to Modric, obviously we haven't really talked about Thiago Silva much in this World Cup podcast, but he's as evergreen as ever.
Well, listen, the reason this Brazil team are looking so good is because of they're built on a very strong foundation. When you look at the goalkeeping unit, they've got 2 of the best goalkeepers in the world, and the defensive unit so far in the World Cup has looked really, really good, especially in the middle. And of course, that's down to Thiago Silva, who just reads the game so well and is such a positive influence in that team. And the players in front of him just can probably relax a bit more, knowing that they've got a player like him commanding the team behind them.
Yeah, and the whistle is just going to be blowing there in a second between England and Senegal. It looks like it's going to be a 3-0 victory, Keith. Before we say a final word on England, first, what have you made of Senegal's campaign as a whole? They weren't that impressive in their group, but the fact they did get to the last 16 without Sadio Mane probably would be viewed as an achievement.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's probably, it's all really relative. They're the African champions, but yeah, look, coming up against England so early on in the knockout stages, it was always going to be a tall order for them. But I don't think they've done themselves. I think they've done well here today. 3-0 probably flatters England, I'll be honest. It wasn't that. Senegal would have looked to get on the score sheet. Pickford made a great save. And if Senegal had took the lead in the game, you're really over to England there and thinking, what sort of reaction he's going to have. As it was, they didn't score the goal, and England have just gone from strength to strength. So I think they've done well. It's a step forward for them, and look, they'll be coming on strong in the next World Cup as well. But yeah, I think they've done proud, because England are really, really world heavyweights in fairness to them. So yeah, no disgrace at all in Senegal. A decent showing from them.
Yeah, it's finished now, 3-0. And just a final word on England. If you were going to rate their performance out of 10, where would it sit given the opposition?
I'd put it in around a 7. There's a lot of room for improvement, and just Jordan Henderson's come up on my screen now, and just so many people are texting me, say, how is Jordan Henderson playing in that midfield with the likes of Mason Mount and people like that being left on the bench? It's his walk rate. It's the way he speaks to people. He doesn't get flustered with situations like this. He played Champions League finals. He knows what he's doing in these big games, and with the goal he come up in as well. It was a lovely finish. So although he has all the steely determination that you need, he's a voice you need in there. He has that little bit of quality as well that you need at the top level, which is just he's exactly what he's a captain that's not a captain, and that's what you need out there, problem solver. So Jordan Henderson was excellent. But look, I'd probably put it at a 7 out of 10, room for improvement, but I wouldn't have been too much more impressed with the French today either against the Polish. I'd give them a 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
I'll give Mbappe a 10 out of 10, but the French were a 7 out of 10.
And Ed, before we go, I suppose just on the theme of Jordan Henderson, how important he is, a lot of it is going to be off the pitch, of course, as well. I think there was a story one of their England teammates was telling them about the fact that Jude Bellingham revealed, now you have to remember Jude Bellingham is only a teenager, a 19-year-old, but he was saying that, or he told Henderson and a couple of people that are around there that his mother still makes his bed, and Henderson went straight through him after hearing that story. So, there's someone setting the standards there.
Yeah, I think the manager takes a lot of credit for that. I think he encourages that sort of player involvement and the players to sort of self-govern themselves, and almost, it's why someone like Henderson is so important to that team. They're a very together squad, aren't they? And they're a very likeable squad, the English squad. Declan Rice, Jack Grealish, we all have scenarios here, but in general, they all come. The whole squad comes across a very together unit, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're doing so well, because there's nobody being allowed to sort of step above them all, and there's no superstars there, and they're lucky that people, I suppose, like Harry Kane, who might be conceived the more superstar side of the squad, isn't that type of player. So I think the whole squad ethic is working well there, and I think it's playing a big part to the reason that they're doing well.
Yeah, and very different from the cliques that were there during the so-called fabled golden generation, which didn't exactly win gold at all. But anyway, that is it for today. Obviously, we know the half of the quarterfinal lineup: the Dutch against Argentina, and now England against France. So that's going to be 2 exciting games. And then, as we've discussed, tomorrow Japan against Croatia at 3:00, and Brazil against South Korea, and both on RT2. And the RT player Keith Treacy, thanks a mil for taking the time. And Ed Leahy, I'll chat to you out on the main floor very shortly.
Cheers, folks. Nice one, Keith.
Cheers, Raf. Good luck. See you later.